It seemed like only a few minutes before Kurt arrived. He and a couple of deputies were in a squad car, and they were followed by an old pickup pulling a horse trailer. The lawman pointed at the trailer and told his men to load the bad guys into his new paddy wagon. Mark noticed that bars had been welded over the windows, and once the door was shut and locked, it would be impossible to escape from. Lisa arrived with Jess in tow and bandaged the wounded man. The wound was fairly clean, she noted to the sheriff, but he should be checked out at the hospital. The sheriff assured her that Dr. Ken would take a look at him. Jess came to see how Mark was. He really wasn't in any hurry to share with his wife how close he'd come to dying. He asked her if she would go pick up his carbine, and she scurried off to retrieve it. The sheriff took a few minutes with everyone who had been involved to get their stories. Mark stayed off by himself, thinking about what could have gone wrong and how lucky they had been. He had talked to Gunny, but it seemed to him that they didn't have enough security. He realized that the man Jim had argued with had been planning this for at least 2 days. Now that he thought about it, that was what had bothered him about the attack on Ralph's, the fact that the attackers had watched their intended victims before attacking. What if either of the attacks had been done by a large group, or worse, someone who really knew what they were doing? If an experienced group of raiders watched them long enough, he was sure they could find a chink in the Silver Hills armor. Mark looked up and saw that there were more and more people coming down to the command post to see what had happened. Jess returned about this time and handed him his carbine. She must have sensed that he wasn't in a talkative mood, because she just squeezed his arm and went over to where Lisa was standing. He unloaded the little carbine and could feel that the action was gritty. It seemed as if the dirt he'd dropped it in had gotten into the inner workings. That was what had caused it to jam. He tried to clean some of the dirt out with his fingers, but he really needed to take it apart to do the job correctly. Mark noticed that the sheriff spent quite a few moments with Gunny. When the big officer came to Mark, it seemed that everyone followed him over. Kurt had a big shit-eating grin on his face. "Faced down 4 pistoleros by yourself, huh?" "I wasn't by myself," said Mark matter-of-factly. "You didn't know that." "Gunny's right. You got some stones on you, boy." "I was just trying to save my hide, that's all." "Way I hear it, you were trying to save everybody's hide. People trying to save themselves usually run the other way." "Well, I was close. If Gunny and them hadn't showed up, I'd either still be running or dead." "That might be true, but you're still J.W. in my book," the sheriff smiled like a Hollywood pretty boy. "J.W.? "Yeah, John Wayne." The crowd behind the lawman erupted into applause, laughter, whistles, and catcalls. Mark blushed. He was no John Wayne, and he knew it. Don Knotts, maybe, but not John Wayne. If these people had seen his hands shaking before, they wouldn't be cheering now. This was the kind of attention he didn't want or need. It almost pissed him off, but that wouldn't solve anything. So he did the only thing he could think of. He turned around and headed up the hills to his house. The sheriff hollered after him, "Where are you going, Duke?" Mark almost wheeled around and told him where to go and what to do when he got there. Instead, his sense of humor kicked in, and he took a second to think about what to say. In his best impersonation of John Wayne, he said, "I'm a-going to the hacienda to change my shorts, Pilgrim." The eruption from the crowd was twice as loud as before.